empowering minds, amplifying voices, and transforming lives. This is the Untold Stories of Hope podcast, brought to you by the Destiny Connect Foundation. Your hosts, Zion Enogeu and Puffy Medupe.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are joining us from all over the world. Welcome to another edition of Untold Stories of Hope, brought to you by Destiny Connect Foundation, a place where we are empowering mind, amplifying voices, and transforming life. This podcast, what we do is we leverage on the power of storytelling to inspire, to motivate, and to encourage people, bringing the stories of people that have been told for years into the world so that persons can find hope as they listen to the story. And you know me, I'm your host, Zion Enogeu, and I have my brother always with me, all the way from South Africa, Mr. Puffy.
Hey, Mr. Z, thank you so much. Welcome, everyone, to Untold Stories of Hope podcast. As Mr. Zion has said, my name is Puffy Medupe, all the way from South Africa. And you know what? I'm looking forward to this exciting episode. We are very vibrant. I also have my cup of something, some tea, just to smooth my throat. Yeah, and we have a very phenomenal guest today. I just want to take this opportunity just to honor this phenomenal woman whom we are going to introduce just now. As the viewers of Untold Stories of Hope podcast, as you are tuning in, you are joining us, you can follow Destiny Connect Foundation either on LinkedIn or Facebook, or you can say Destiny Connect Foundation.org is our website whereby you can follow Untold Stories of Hope podcast. We have the exceptional Daniela Hartmann, and she's a superb leader. She's a speaker. She speaks a lot about leadership, and the power of transformation. I've heard her, speak about that before. She's an executive coach. She's the founder of the Grid Global, authentic heart-centered leadership. It's a training for key players in international companies. So she does a lot, of great initiatives globally. And I believe that as the conversation goes on, you'll be able to get to know more and more about her. But once again, we welcome you to Untold Stories of Hope podcast, brought to you by Destiny Connect Foundation.
Thank you so much, Puffy. It's a great honor to be here with you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Daniel. Thank you so much, Mr. Poppy, for that wonderful introduction. Viewers at home or listeners at home, I want you to sit tight and relax, because today it's going to be another interesting conversation talking about leadership and accountability. And we have no better person to do this with us than Daniela with us on stage today. So Daniela, would say a very big thank you for honoring our invitation to be able to come in here and share that Untold Stories of Hope to help us inspire more people all over the world. Now, this brings us to our first question. I know you are ready for us, and we are ready to learn, we are ready to listen, we are ready to absorb your wisdom, your years of expertise and knowledge. Now, we live in a world where many persons find it very difficult to be accountable, many find it even as leaders. Now, how has accountability shaped your journey as a leader? Can you share with us a moment where being accountable transformed your leadership style?
Well, I think accountability has something to do with clarity, right? Clarity of mind, clarity of path, and inspiration for others. If the leader, or even as a coworker, there's no accountability, no clarity about responsibility, obviously everybody will be slightly confused. So it's the whole path from the beginning to the end. You won't have a clear intention to start with. I think the clarity of intention is where it starts. Then the constant, what you do in the Destiny Connect Foundation, to connect and then to communicate and then to collaborate in order to reach a certain goal. And that must be clear as well. And each of the people, not only the leader, everybody who's there, needs to have accountability of their part and constant communication of opportunities, challenges, and so on. So accountability for me is based on clarity and clear responsibilities, just as a start off. Accountability, what I've seen within my work in charitable organizations, and before I used to work for the UN as well. This is why I was so lucky to be in South Africa for a year, is you start an initiative and then you have to see who do you actually want to benefit and how do you want to benefit. But then you have to prove that in order to continue a certain momentum. And to prove that and to show that you're actually doing what you set out to do, accountability is the main thing. So I worked on HIV and AIDS, for example. So we had to be extremely clear. Who do we actually target? What are we actually doing? And then when I saw, certain things at that time not working the way I would have hoped, access to medication, for example, people not delivering on their promises, then you lose trust. And that means in the end, your whole project will crumble eventually. So this is why accountability to me is so important. And I think there's really two parts. One is the outer part, like how do you actually structure and implement a project, but also your inner accountability. Are you true to yourself? Do you know your own goals? Are you in your own integrity? So for me, this inner part, when I could see that certain programs couldn't be delivered because, again, medication wasn't delivered on time or not at all, or to a price that was not possible for people to purchase. And I could see, okay, if I want to stay in that job, I somehow have to stand up for that as well, or I have to embody that as well. And I couldn't do it at that time. And I have great respect for people who do find their ways, but I couldn't. I'm sorry, I have a little thing in my throat. That's what happens. My thing then was to go to a monastery in South India into Buddhism and then look into inner integrity first and inner accountability first. And I think that is based on knowing ourselves, knowing our mind, knowing our motivation, and being honest with ourselves. So, I hope that wasn't too much of an explanation, but that's where I'm at.
It's actually powerful because, Daniela, you mentioned a lot of principles really that governs accountability, honoring your promises. There are so many, accountability that is not honored brings a lot of disappointment to a lot of organizations and the masses of people on the ground, who really needs what you have promised and declared to can stand in the gap for them. We know the story of Destiny Connect Foundation, how the founder, Mr. James Ojo, said one day he saw a truck that was delivering food, which was, somehow not in good, nature for people to consume. The food was spoiled and everything. And that gave birth to the vision of Destiny Connect Foundation, because he understood that if someone can give children in a charity organization spoiled food, it shows lack of accountability. And you can imagine how many people, like, for instance, you said you are working in charity, probably with some of the programs, HIV and AIDS. There are so many people that really health is a priority. Now, can you share a story where accountability helped to build stronger relationships with donors or beneficiaries? What lessons do you learn from that experience?
Well, one experience I can share with you is I moved to Nepal. I was in the monastery until 2011, from 2002 to 2011. So I did my Buddhist education there. And then I moved with one of my teachers to Nepal. And he comes from an indigenous culture in the Himalayas. And we were starting to do charitable work there. It was all sorts of things, so building schools, bringing nurses up there, all of these sort of things. But in their culture, you don't work with contracts or written things, but they work with word of, like your word is your contract. If you say you do something, then you do it. But in our country, which my country is Germany, we do need contracts. We need, for the taxes, we need accounts and all of that. So I could see the two cultures clashing. When we were talking about accounts, they thought we didn't trust them, and that we were kind of checking up on that. On the other hand, when I went to Germany and I said, well, listen, it's very hard for me to get an account, they feel threatened by that, or not threatened, that's not the right word, but they feel like we're checking up on them. They were like, well, we don't care. We need that. So accountability had to be built with a sort of trust of each other's intentions. And I think that's another thing we really have to look at, is what is our initial intention when we do something? And the moment everybody understood, yeah, we're really there to support. We're really there to help. But there's different points of view, different experiences, different codes of honor, let's say. The moment we could really talk about that and understand each other, then we could build accountability towards each other. We could show them where our money came from, how we were getting the funds. And then on the other hand, they were able to show us what they did with it and how they did with it, and building bridges. So this charitable foundation, I stopped working for them a few years back, about 6 years back, but they're still going strong because we took the time of understanding each other and building strong accountability to each other. So I think still every year it's about 30 to 50,000 US dollars that we bring into the region.
Wow, that's so powerful, Daniela. That's a great illustration. When it comes to relationship building, it's about understanding. And I love the fact that how understanding was able to come in despite the difference in culture, despite the difference in ideology, because understanding was in the place. You all could still work together and still come to a consensus to make the project being able to work. So, relationship and accountability, I think they go hand in hand. For a relationship to go smoother, each and everyone involved in the relationship has to be accountable to their action, to their word, and to everything they do. So I want to say thank you so much, for sharing that, because we are here to learn from you, because we know that you have been doing this for years, and just to be able to learn from your wisdom, from your expertise, it's something that we are excited about. Now, this brings us to our next question. When we have been talking about accountability, we've spoken about relationship, and I love one major point you spoke about accountability, and I said is it has to do with clarity of intention. That's rang a bell like, whoa, that's huge, that's amazing. Thank you so much for saying that. When it comes to accountability, can you share with us, how has this accountability be able to drive a positive impact in your work in a not-for-profit?
I think in nonprofits, again, accountability is something that is actually sort of in the middle part. If we talk about clarity of intention, what I've seen a few times is that people have the best of hearts. They've seen something, they've maybe gone through something, a certain kind of trauma, and they just want to help. But sometimes they don't have the tools, or they kind of jump into the middle of the field and they don't understand also what the other players are, governmental players, for example, tax offices. But also something that I've seen a few times, people are actually trying to resolve their own trauma through working with other people, but actually their own trauma gets triggered again. And then things get a bit side-looped. So to be really accountable, I think the inner accountability comes first. First, we really have to sit with ourselves before we start a project, before we start to help somebody else, and see, where am I actually coming from? Am I just trying, to work on my childhood problem, or, whatever abuse I've had, and then, I'm kind of actually more spewing it out and proliferating it rather than, condemning it, or not condemning. How do you say? Bring it into a proper form in order to support others. So we need to be very clear in ourselves. Do we actually have the tools and the understanding to support another person, another community? Do we have that cultural understanding? So that's the first thing. And then is to work very clearly with the partners. And I know that it's a bit hard because we want to kind of jump in and immediately help. But I think building a proper foundation, being very clear, who are our partners? What is their motivation? Why do they want to be in there? Like in the West, sometimes, at least that's my experience, a lot of people want to be involved in stuff for their name brand. They want to put it on something. And then they want to have the poor, whatever, helpless person, and we're going to come and rescue them. And then I'm sure all of you know the helper, rescuer, or the victim, rescuer, and perpetrator triangle. And that doesn't solve anything. It actually, the dynamic keeps on being spun around and around and around. So I think to really have a good foundation, say, what do we want? Am I actually capable of doing that? Who are my partners? Are they doing it out of the good of their hearts? Or are there some ulterior motives hidden behind it? To work very, very meticulously, let's put it that way, on the foundation, on the basis of a nonprofit. Be really clear about the legal implications. Because if somebody can, throw you off because you didn't file your taxes properly, or you're not registered properly, I know it's a headache. I mean, for one organization that I served, we took a year until everything was done, but it's just the way it is. And then, just be consistent with reporting, be consistent with communication, be honest about mistakes or, setbacks or challenges, not trying to cover anything up. And especially in the closest group amongst people, have that constant communication about what do we want, where are we going. There's a sentence that stuck in my mind from very much at the beginning of my work life. And I hope I can use the F word just a single time. Assumption is the mother of all. So people assume things and they think, I thought Puffy's going to call me, or I thought Zion's going to do that. And then, the communication wasn't there and things haven't been done or done differently. So accountability for me is, clarity of intention, clarity amongst the people that work together, and then constant communication.
Yeah, that's powerful. Welcome to Untold Stories of Hope podcast, brought to you by Destiny Connect Foundation. Yes, I'm still here. My name is Pafimidu P and Zion Enogeru with the exceptional Daniela Hartmann. She's just a global leader. She's an expert in leadership and also charity work. And we are still talking here about accountability in leadership. And, Daniela, you have mentioned a lot of, there are certain things you kept on, emphasizing in terms of authenticity, in terms of accountability, not just being accountability by pronouncing the word, by accountability by making sure that you run your things with authenticity. You get proper knowledge of how to run organization and how to distribute funds, to this charity work, how to run a project. There are so many people who don't have experience in running a project. There are so many people who don't even know what they are doing. And my take on this, what I'm getting from you is that accountability comes also with experience. Having done something and doing it, like you said in your statement earlier, that, admit your mistakes sometimes. You can't always do things correctly. There's a room for mistakes. There's a room for growth. And there's a room to also ask other people who have done what you are doing before to say, hey, can you help me? So we're living in a world now, going to the next question that I have for you. We are living in a world where there is corruption. We are living in a world where there's greed. You have spoken about people who've got childhood traumas, and some of them, they never dealt with their character, and their character now becomes, a sabotage, or it becomes a thorn, in some of the charity work that should be done. I mean, let's be honest, there are so many people out there globally. Most of them are suffering because projects are being funded, but the money never reaches to those countries or those communities. There's a lot of donations and there's a lot of good deeds, that are intended for the people, and they never reach there. So what are the common challenges that leaders and organizations face in maintaining accountability? All right. And how do you overcome them? We've got so many challenges. We've got challenges in terms of, like I said, character, mismanagement, corruption. And even though there are those challenges, but there are still good leaders who have good management skills. There are still good organizations which are setting an example. So what are those challenges that you as a leader or leaders in organizations are facing, and how do you overcome that?
I think one of the main things that I've seen in some countries I've worked with, poverty is sometimes so deep that charity work becomes a way of income, which is good. People should be paid properly if they run an organization. And then the line to corruption can get very thin. I've seen that quite a few times in children's homes in Nepal, that, people would just siphon off a huge amount of money and not, just put something different in the books. And if you would talk to them about it, because a few times I was asked to do that for friends of mine who donated from Germany, it can actually get quite unpleasant. But it is also this person's income, that's what they do. So I think for ourselves, or my takeaway from it is to understand a community and a system well, even if it hurts. And a lot of countries, corruption is very deep. You won't even get a document signed without, or, you won't get it signed in time without, giving a little bit of money here and there. Or, or you want to get a school built, and, the cement suddenly costs double because there is a commission for somebody in there. And you don't really know why and how they would get a commission on a bag of cement, but apparently they do. So we need to work with our own integrity and see what is it that we want? Do we want this school built? Are we, can we somehow communicate that that's the way it is done in that way? And if I want to have this school built within this and this time frame, a bit of corruption won't go any other way. Or do I stick to my principles and then the school gets built a year later? Sometimes it is these sort of decisions. And I do believe the main thing is to have good people around you and to have a very strong backbone with these people. To run out there alone can be very frustrating. It can be extremely frustrating. But if there are some people behind you that echo your sentiments, that are able to show up with you in the meetings, and especially as you have mentioned, Puffy, who has done it before? Usually there have been forerunners. So, for example, I'm very not entangled, but very close to an organization in Nepal called the Nepal Youth Foundation, and they work in a caste equality project. So they're bringing the lower caste up with giving them access to schooling and so on. And it's a highly corrupt setting. So they, for example, have simply sat down and they have just basically announced their project to the whole community and said, we want to build a school, but some people are not really letting us build the school. So they were able to kind of get the community on their side, saying, that ain't right. There's the money's there for the school, but you're not, There's some people who want to get a big chunk of the pie and not lead it on. So they were very clever in doing that. But, they also took a whole year of going to the community and building trust and showing the community that they actually had their back. So we have to understand the communities we work with, the social structures we work with, the governmental structures, and then take the decisions that are most aligned, but with the caveat that sometimes it won't be 100% the way we want it.
Wow, beautiful. Thank you so much, Danielle. That was so profound. Looking at the problems you've listed and then the solution you were able to give. And one thing that stood out for me, you said, have good people around you, people that can echo your sentiment. That's very profound, because sometimes when you are trying to fight this corruption, you cannot do it all by yourself. There is need for you to have people of like mind, people who have the same sentiment as you, people who can agree with you, to say, what, we cannot condone this. We will not allow this to stand. Then we fighting together gives us a better chance of overcoming it. Because if you have more corrupt people, you being the only good person can be overwhelming sometimes. It's like you against the world. So I love the fact you said having people who share the same sentiment with you. And then you spoke about building trust and understanding the communities. This is something that we shouldn't take for granted, especially when we are trying to overcome the challenges that comes with accountability. Building trust, having a proper relationship with people, and getting to understand them better. It's very, very profound. Well, I need to give a round of applause for that, because, you've shared with us some nuggets, some wisdom, some insights. I want to say a big thank you for doing that. And this brings us to our next question. When it comes to team, when it comes to communities, being able to establish the culture of accountability can look so very, very difficult. So how do you inspire a culture of accountability when it comes to building teams and communities?
I think it's to talk about the longevity and the sustainability of the project. There is no other way to have a long-running, sustainable project if there is no accountability. Because the moment there is unclarity, there is mistrust, there's suspicion. What did so-and-so do with the money? Why am I doing all the work? Why is that person never showing up when the things get tough? So you can have a head start. You can start a project, but without accountability, responsibility, clarity, it will simply not work out in the long run. I've never seen that. It just doesn't work, especially because the people who are supposed to fund it, they will ask for accountability. Nobody is just going to give money for nothing. It's just why. There are a million charities out there, and we know the world these days. There's another fire going up at some other end of the world 5 minutes later. One time it's this war, that famine, this flood. So if you want to keep people funding your stuff, there needs to be accountability, or it will be short. So this is something to communicate to the other people or your counterparts within the communities about, and say, yeah, right, you can do that, but that means it's going to be a one-shot project, and next year nobody's going to give money anymore. This is one thing. But one thing that came into my mind, and I hope I can just sideway into it, it's also that we need to be, as people who do these projects, we need to be very clear also on outcomes and adjust these outcomes. I was just thinking, as we were talking about a project that I did with a beggar colony in Kathmandu, and there were parts of this project that could have gotten people really out of poverty and into a normal, quote unquote, workforce. And they declined. And we were like going, why would that be? And then I had to understand that within their social structure, if some of them would go out of that social environment, they wouldn't be A and they wouldn't be B. They wouldn't be part of the beggar community anymore, but there would also be no part for them in the social construct outside. So their whole belonging was threatened by actually stepping out. So we had to adjust our project in just giving food through COVID time, for example, because there was no social structure, or during the earthquake. But we had to give up on saying, okay, we're going to actually provide work for you. And that was a bit, but then I had to see, well, this is our goal for them. It is not their goal. They are okay as beggars. So these sort of things was another thing about accountability, because sometimes you start a project, you think there will be a certain goal, but then you see, hey, the community ain't that interested in having this or that goal. They actually want to have something different. Yeah.
Hey, that's powerful. And, you said so many powerful things. I'm sure our viewers, now watching the podcast understand, accountability in leadership better than before, especially that I know there are so many leaders also of different organizations who are watching now, to get the encouragement and the insight of what your understanding to accountability in leadership is. And if you've just joined us now, you are tuned into Untold Stories of Hope podcast. It's brought to you by Destiny Connect Foundation. And we are still here with Daniela Hartmann, and we are talking about accountability in leadership. Remember, we really empower minds, amplify voices, and we transform lives. And this is the information that is going to help you. You can go and check Untold Stories of Hope podcast on Destiny Connect Foundation, Facebook and LinkedIn, and Destiny DestinyConnectFoundation.org, so that you can also follow us. Now, Daniela, there are people who are hopeless. One of the leaders that I once worked with once taught me this thing, to say familiarity breeds contempt. Sometimes people don't deliver according to expectation because they are too familiar with, either familiar with their communities, or they are familiar, with their position in leadership or management, or they are familiar now with finances to a point where they lose the value of why they vowed and agreed to step down on the ground and help communities of vulnerable people. And I always also know that, there's a quote that says, where there's great power, there is great responsibility. And because once you get into leadership, you possess a specific amount of power and influence. And if it's not well directed, it can really cause, a lot of harm, especially to communities and vulnerable individuals or group of people who are really in need. I mean, I have to be honest with you, Daniela. I worked with so many different organizations. A couple of years ago, I would see a lot of, volunteers in organizations, losing hope. Yet they have to go on the ground and give other people hope, because the money, like you said, the money they were supposed to be paid, they are not being paid, they are not being taken care of, and they are campaigning for the well-being of other people when they themselves are not well. And I've seen also the kind of situations where organizations, charity projects fail and they collapse to the ground because there was no amount of proper accountability. Now, as we are wrapping up and concluding, this interview with you, if there's one message about the power of accountability that you wish everyone would understand, what would it be? What is it that you can tell a leader out there, or whether someone wants to begin a charity organization and they have passion, to help their community get it out of poverty, or they want to do health programs whereby they support people with health challenges, or there could be any other thing. There are so many programs out there, charity programs, whether it's giving food, like you mentioned, Sometimes there are disasters that occur, in different communities globally. What is it that you can tell a leader out there, either who is already having organization and running projects, or a leader who was aspiring leader who wants to get into this thing? Tell them a message about the power of accountability that you wish they could know.
I think what I would say, first of all, again, is the inner accountability. We need to be extremely clear on what is our motivation, our intention. And if you're a spiritual person, is there a larger thing that goes beyond just what I want? And then also give over that we are just mere humans. None of us alone will change the world, no matter how much we want it. We need to have proper community. And we need to be accountable, first of all, to our own values, to our own soul, and to understand what it happens if we're corrupt with ourselves. If we if we muddle with our own integrity, that has a huge impact on our mental health. And then, of course, we cannot have hope. But at least when we have our own back, if we have clarity of our intention and morals and our integrity and our values, then there is an inner sanctuary, I call it. This is why, for example, I went to the monastery, because I needed that inner stability and to reach out for help whenever our own mental health is challenged. And to find these people very early on, even within the Destiny Connect Foundation, to have a couple people and say, listen, I'm having a really hard day, Puffy. Sit down with me for half an hour. You have no idea what just happened. Have a good support system, and also be very clear with the people around you. Again, if people are compromised, and we see that early on, people's characters actually do show themselves quite early on. And if we see people are only in for the money, if we see that people are not delivering on time and they kind of put their work on somebody else out, better work, have a longer time of assembling a team than a short-term solution. This is what I would say. And especially be good to yourself. If there is exhaustion, and when there is burnout, when there is a moment where you want to run screaming against the wall, take some time off, eat some good food, whatever, go to a spa. If there's something like that, or go swimming or play with your kids, it's absolutely okay to take a break. I think that is what I would say. And the inner accountability comes first, and from that, the outer accountability will be born.
Wow, thank you so much, Daniela. That's been so inspiring. Thank you for gracing us and sharing some deep wisdom and thought with us. I love it when you said inner accountability first, then outward accountability. And then prioritizing your mental health is not negotiable. It's very, very important. And the power of we, the power of us. By yourself, you cannot change the world, but together we can do so much more to make a huge positive difference in the world. Surrounding yourself with support system. Have people you can go to, tell them how you feel, people you can be vulnerable before them. You can actually tell them, I'm tired, I'm weak, I cannot go on anymore. Then they encourage you, they support you, and they push you to keep going. So thank you so much, Daniela Hartmann, for your deep wisdom, for your insight when it comes to accountability in leadership, because this is something people need to know. There are many persons in leadership who are just there, but they're not being accountable. And during your talk, you spoke something about longevity and sustainability. So if for any project to experience longevity and sustainability, there is need for us to embrace accountability. When you're accountable in your project, when you're accountable in your business, you will experience the power of sustainability and the power of longevity. Thank you so much, Daniela Hartmann, and my co-host, Puffy Medupe, all the way from South Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a wonderful conversation today talking about accountability in leadership. I'm sure you have been inspired. Don't forget, this place is a space where we tell the untold stories of hope to be able to empower mind, to amplify voices, and to transform life. And do not forget, follow us on all social media platform. On LinkedIn, we're there. Yes, on YouTube. Yes, you're going to get us on YouTube as well. And do what we are about and be part of the community, because we are about making a positive impact in the world and making sure that no one is left out. Everyone deserves to be loved. Everyone deserves to be supported. Everyone deserves their story to inspire the people out there. Till we meet again, same time next week, we want you to keep being accountable. And I tell you, sustainability and accountability, it's something very important that we must embrace. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode of Untold Stories of Hope podcast. We hope you enjoyed and you were inspired by today's conversation. Remember, you can get more access to resources plus join a thriving global community of change makers by visiting our website at destinyconnectfoundation.org. Please subscribe to our channel and spread the word. Don't forget to turn the notification on. Until next time, keep inspiring your world.